Top officials at the Department of Homeland Security are on their way out. Among them is Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, who announced her departure Sunday. It comes as President Trump's frustration grows over a spike in migrant families seeking asylum. CBS News Washington correspondent Paula Reid has the story.
I just want to thank the president again for the tremendous opportunity to serve this country.
Kirstjen Nielsen is the biggest name among top Homeland Security officials on their way out as President Trump ordered an overhaul of the embattled agency.
I share the president's goal of securing the border. I will continue to support all efforts to address the humanitarian and security crisis on the border.
In the last 24 hours, we've learned 5 senior officials have been purged as part of a plan engineered and directed by presidential advisor and immigration hardliner Zeke Miller.
You cannot conceive of a nation without a strong, secure border.
The shakeup comes amid a surge of migrants trying to enter the U.S. from Mexico. According to the White House, apprehensions at the southern border spiked above 100,000 in March, contributing to the president's frustration with his immigration team. President Trump, seeking to galvanize his base ahead of the 2020 election, signaled big changes were coming last week during a border visit. He pulled the nomination of Ron Vitello to lead immigration and customs enforcement, saying he wanted to move in a tougher direction.
We want to have people, we want to have everything just perfecto. We may be going in a different, you'll be seeing very soon.
Today, the president also fired the head of the Secret Service, Tex Alice, who's led the agency since April 2017.
It is a no-fail mission, and the agency gets the job done no matter what.
CBS News has learned Alice was notified that personnel changes were coming a few weeks ago, prior to a March 30th security incident at Mar-a-Lago. In May, he will be replaced by James Murray, the assistant director in the Office of Protective Operations. Also being ousted, Citizenship and Immigration Services Director Francis Cisna, General Counsel John Mitnick, and Deputy Secretary Claire Grady. Later this week, Kevin McAleenan will become acting DHS chief. He's worked at Customs and Border Protection since the beginning of the Trump administration.
2 weeks ago, I briefed the media and testified in Congress that our immigration system was at the breaking point. That breaking point has arrived this week at our border.
Federal courts have often intervened to block the president's hardline immigration policies. Earlier today, a federal judge blocked his policy of sending asylum seekers back to Mexico to wait out their cases. Elaine?
Paula Reid, thank you. For more on this, let's bring in Zeke Miller. He's a CBSN political contributor and White House correspondent for the Associated Press. Zeke, thanks so much for joining us. What more have we learned about why Kirstjen Nielsen resigned?
Well, we know that this is both a surprise and not a surprise at the same time. It's one of those decisions where we've known the president's frustration with the Department of Homeland Security has been mounting for the last several months. She's never had a particularly close relationship with the president and his senior team, certainly Zeke Miller among them. At the same time, the reason for why this decision happened this all came about on Sunday is it was a bit surprising that she was with the president at the border Friday. There were no outward signs that this was happening, that this was going to be that imminent. What sources tell us is that it was her lack of knowledge about the president's decision to pull Vitello's nomination to permanently lead ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement, permanently. That happened late Thursday. That led to Nielsen sort of the breaking point for her, and she felt that she was being undermined by the White House. She was not able to credibly do her job going forward, and that she wanted to have a conversation with the president about changing that Sunday, and that conversation ultimately led to her resignation.
Well, Kevin McAleenan, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner, will fill Nielsen's role in an acting capacity. What more do we know about him, Zeke? Is it likely he could be nominated for the role?
It's certainly possible that he could be nominated. We have seen acting secretaries take on permanent jobs. We've also seen them sort of languish in sort of limbo, like we're currently seeing at the Department of Defense, where Patrick Shanahan has been acting there for three or so months, but hasn't been given the job permanently while the president interviews. So it could go either way. He's fairly well respected within the agency. Bureaucrats and politicians there alike do like him. At the same time, he's not, according to people close to him and people who follow the department very closely. He's not an ideologue. He does not use the same sort of hardline rhetoric that the president and people around him have often used about illegal immigration and that issue. So in that sense, he's an odd choice, but he's very well respected in the ability to get things done in that department. So he does bring a lot of experience within the department, but he is, when the president says he's looking for somebody tougher and to take the department in a tougher direction, McElwain doesn't sort of fit the bill to a T in a lot of respects.
Well, Zeke, who else might be considered? Do we have a sense?
We don't yet. We know that there have been constant discussions within the White House about who to replace Nielsen with on a permanent basis. If it's not McElwain, we're going to start to hear names like Chris Kobach coming back in, sort of the Kansas immigration hawk. That's not going to happen. In any event, even with a Republican-controlled Senate, the politics of this issue are so fraught right now that it is likely that whomever the president picks will have a very, very, very tough confirmation battle. If that's even possible, it's likely that job can be filled by an acting capacity all the way through the 2020 election, given how fraught the politics are.
Interesting. Well, what do we know about why Secret Service Director Tex Alice was fired?
What the White House has been saying, and people at the Department of Homeland Security have been saying, is that he was brought in as an outsider, which is responsive to a request from independent government experts who had said that the agency had been too insular, certainly during the Obama years and in the early Trump, beginning of the Trump administration, that had led to some security vulnerabilities, and they recommended somebody from the outside come in and shake things up. That led to a culture clash within the agency, and Alice was sort of some of that bubbled up to the president and the people around the president who felt that and the president decided to side with the people who protect him day to day rather than with Alice, sort of the man who was there to sort of bring an outsider perspective to what had been a very insular agency.
Well, these changes come shortly after President Trump announced that he wants to go in a quote-unquote tougher direction when it comes to immigration. How might all of these departures impact that fight for border security and changes to immigration policies?
This is one of those areas where the president needs people in those jobs to do things. We've often seen the president not appoint people to certain roles, allow personnel vacancies to lapse in areas where he doesn't want the government to take action. In this case, when it comes to dealing with the issue of illegal immigration, moving funding for the border wall that he wants to build, things like that, that requires affirmative action by the government, by competent individuals who know how to maneuver the levers of the federal bureaucracy, who can think creatively, message things to the public, and for the president now to sort of clean house at the Department of Homeland Security and not necessarily have a clear succession plan in place across the entire agency is kind of surprising, because in some ways it is a little counterproductive. The president has been anxious for these individuals to take tougher action, move quicker when it comes to securing the border, implementing the policies that he'd like to see implemented, but he is now not giving them the people that are there to do things. And the lack of a succession plan is one of those issues where even some folks inside the White House had wished the president not moves as swiftly as he is right now, because at a certain point there is going to be a brain drain, and that's going to have consequences on the day-to-day operations of that department. And that's one of those issues that this is a national security agency essentially guarding the federal border, but also the other national security roles with the Department of Homeland Security. There are some concerns about the implications of all of these personnel moves.
All right, we'll continue to watch it. Zeke Miller in Washington for us. Zeke, thank you.
Thank you.